Hey, you got kids here? We actually brought them in and promote the event. They're doing a bunch of barbecue and industry. If you look around, see a prices in front of the senior professor raising in NYU. He's like, when I started this podcast, he's like, now I'm still doing it. So Kersten had to really bring young kids and like Deborah, junior autograph t-shirt. So you come to local area, you're going to break the and you can look up for them. If you guys buy specific items, even if you're not familiar with small destination styles, I've been selling antiques 30 years. I know what and I can tell you how many $15. That's good enough for us. So, when you all right. What I'm we actually brought them in and kind of promote the event. They're doing a bunch of social media and this industry and one of the approaches that was the senior phrasing in NYU. When I started this class, he's like, now I'm still doing it. Kersten had to really want to bring kids and like Deborah, autograph t-shirt. So you come to local area, you're going to pray for here, or whatever it needs to be, and you can look up for them. If you buy specific items, or even if you also do small estimates, okay? I've been selling 30 years of stock.
Together, all right.
What I'm Hey, you got kids here? We have we're going to help kind of promote, but they're doing a barbecue with social media. And notice, if you look around, you see a lot of kids on and one right alongside the senior professor raising in NYU. When I started this podcast, he's like, now I'm lucky to still doing it. Kersten had to really want to bring and like Deborah, autograph t-shirt. So you come to local area, you're going to pray for them or whatever, and you can look up for this website. If you get buy specific items, or even if you also do value, okay? 30 stock. I know what word that's good enough for us. So when you got to take Hey, got kids here? We brought them in and we're going to help kind of, but started like he's like now I'm lucky for so he kind of really wants to be and Deborah her junior throughout the future. Good luck. You come to us. You can pray for in your area and your website. You guys know about even if you're not certified, you also do make value and selling antique cars. I know I can tell you something about John, you got
Together, all right.
Hey! What got you here? And we're going to help kind of promote our big deal with social media. You notice, if you look around, you see a lot of kids already. And this is the tenured professor in NYU. And he's like, started this like youth, now I'm lucky for. So he kind of really wants to be young and Deborah her junior throughout the future. You come to us, we'll stay with you and pray for you or whatever it needs to be. You can hook up with them, and all we do is so, if you guys know specific items, even if you're not certified, you can call us, make value. I've been selling antique cars. I know what you're worth. So, John, you got we actually brought them in and kind of promote the event, but they're doing a bunch of social media. And this industry is like kids already. And one of the events right on the site was tenured professor of NYU. And he's like started this like youth, now I'm lucky for. So he kind of really wants to young kids and Deborah her junior throughout the future. Good luck. You come to us, we'll stay with you in your area and you can do our website. And all our customers on the other side of the street. About specifics for a fund, we also do what's called okay? Cars 30 years old stock. And you're going to see, I can tell you how many are 15 about that's good enough. So, we do that through
All right.
We actually brought them in and promote the event, but a bunch of our big deal. And this industry, if you look around, the appraisal was the appraising in NYU. He's like, my youth. He's like, now I'm old. Kersten kind of really wants to bring young kids in. We'll pray for in your area. Couple there. If you about specific items for this time, we also do okay. I've been 30 years old stock. That's good enough for us. So, when you guys do
Together, all right.
One night code. Hey! So Gail got you in here.
Every person
We're going to help kind of promote the event, but they're doing a bunch of social media. But this industry, one of the impressions of was the of phrasing in NYU. He's like, when I started doing it, he's like, now I'm Kersten kind of really wants to bring kids and so we'll carry your area and you can do a website about specific items or even if you also do small estimates, okay? I've been selling 30 years old stock. And I can tell you how much for 15 bucks. Guys, you guys can
Together.
got you here. We actually
Every person Friday.
kind of promote the event. They're doing a bunch of social media. And this industry, if you look at the impressions of the phrasing in NYU. He's like, when I started using it, he's like, Kersten kind of really wants to bring this Deborah, Junior. You're lucky. Come to us. We'll pray for in your area. And you can do a website. I've been selling antique cars. I know what the word is. That's good enough for us. So, will
Together. All right.
Hey! We actually
Every person Friday.
kind of promote the event, but they're doing a bunch of social media. And this industry, and one of the impressions of both sides was the professor of phrasing in English. And he's like, he's like, now I'm Kersten kind of really wants to young and Deborah monograph t-shirt. So you come to us, we'll carry you, we're going to pray for you, or whatever it needs to be. You can hook up with them. And all we do is so, you guys know, I've been selling antique cars, 30, multi-vehicle stock. You know what? We're and I can work for 15 about good enough for us. So, will you, John, you guys can strengthen? And then liquidation of
Think about that. All right.
We actually brought him in for and we're gonna go to the event, but our big deal is and this industry. If you look around, one of the appraisals at the site was the sort of appraising, and he's like, my youth, and he's like, that's full. So Kersten kind of really bring young kids from your Deborah, junior, throughout the future. Good luck. You come to us, say we're either going to pray for you or whatever it needs to be. You can look up to them, do it, and all the things to get so, if you guys know specific items, even if you're not certified, or small estimates, go ahead. I've been selling in 30 years, stock, and I can take my 15 about 8 years. So, will you, John, you guys can strengthen? And then liquidation of
Think about that. All right.
Hey, Bill got you here. We brought him in for and we're going to help kind of, but our big deal is and notice the tree. If you look around, you see like, no, and races in front of the tenure of appraising in NYU. When I started, he's like, now I'm less Kersten kind of really wants to like Deborah has a lot of future. So you come to us, we'll carry you in the area, interview or whatever, and you can look up on the website. If you got about specific items, or even if you're not off the table or small estimates, go ahead. I've been selling in 30 years. Stock. I know what that's good enough. So, will you guys strengthen? Okay.
About that. Yes. All right.
Hey. We actually
Every first Friday.
kind of promote the event. They're doing a bunch of social media. And this industry, one of the appraisals that was the sort of appraising in NYU. He's like, my youth. He's like, that's full. So, Kersten kind of really bring young kids from your so if you've got like a debt, monograph future. So we'll carry your area if it needs to be. Live, do a recipe, get so, you guys know about for certified, we also do for making value. Go ahead on antique cars, 30, multi-vehicle stock. I know what you're worth. Good enough for us. So, will you, John,
All right.
My name's Coach. Video guy. Hey! Well, Bill got you here. We're going to help kind of, but they're doing our big deal with social media. And we noticed, if you look around, you see a lot of kids already. And right alongside the tenured professor at NYU. And he's like,
Okay, so Gary and I had a conversation. He said no, and part of what my concern was, what I had, the opportunity I had to look at it, was that it didn't look typical for a Handel lamp.
Exactly.
Okay, because Handel had a particular look. Their main line was like a solid glass dome, metal body, and then it was reverse painted behind. So all of the design that you would see would be somebody would go in behind and paint backwards on the interior. They also did what was called the panel series. Okay, in the hierarchy of lamps of this type, you have the
Yep.
he made, was the first really to develop the stained glass style lamp. Okay, then next in line was Handel.
Yep.
So in conversation with Gary, we determined, so you have Handel at number 2. Handel had within its hierarchy the reverse painting, the panel glass, and another set. Okay. In their day, they were all selling for in the $19 to $20 range. You could, if you knew where to go, you could get a Tiffany right out of the place.
Can you imagine getting a Tiffany's lamp? Oh my gosh.
20 to buy a Tiffany, a Handel was in that same price range. But even for the general public, that would be a little bit high. Now, because in those days, a whole week's salary would be approximately that, maybe even a little less, $15, $20 a week. So you'd have to be affluent enough that you could go and spend a week's wages to buy a lamp. So what happened was the market was open and other companies came in. And this lamp, turns out, is made by the Empire, and let's see, I've got my exact notes, the Empire Lamp and Brass Company out of Chicago. And so there was a style of glass produced at the time called slag. You get solid sheets of color, and instead of taking and painting on it or cutting it out and making each one of these facets a different color, that you would take and do a metal overlay. So the glass goes on, the overlay, and so the pattern would go over the surface, and it make it a little bit more affordable. And what's unusual about this one, most of the lamps of the period have a solid brass base. And what really makes this one pop is the fact that slag glass on the base with a light underneath. So the whole glass, you get, in those rooms of the day, this would just warm up a room and it gave you that warm golden glow.
Yes,
you would love to sit under. So where does it fall into the marketplace today? Okay. With a lamp, a purist wants to buy the lamp in the closest form to the original as possible. And in conversation with you, you said you had it restored and rewired.
Yes.
And then as part of the cleaning, they took and removed some of the surface, right?
Since it was lead, when they cleaned it, it just was a gray color.
Right.
And so they asked me what color I wanted, and so as you can see, it has a brass here. So I said I wanted sort of a brass color, and I'm a really blingy person. I love jewelry. And anyway, so I bought this gold with this little bit of sparkle in it because I want sparkle in my house.
Okay. So to a purist, this has now been altered as far as a lamp.
Right.
Okay. In discussion with Gary, he said if he as a dealer bought the lamp, what he'd have to do is take it apart, strip it down, and rewire it. The wiring was replaced to bring it up to code, but to bring it back to its original state, they make recreations of the original cloth.
Oh.
So he would have to rewire it again, put a cloth over to the item, and then take off the coating that's been put on, and tone it down. Okay.
To really match that original state.
To bring it as close to its original state as possible. And that's where
restoration becomes really key, and knowing, and if you like it better in this state, absolutely you made a good choice. But as far as the value is concerned, if you were interested in catching a higher value.
I'm never going to sell it anyways.
Yes, of course.
Right, because you have all this wonderful family history.
Yes.
And that's really where the key value of a piece like this is.
Absolutely.
You can remember seeing it glow through the window of your house, the lady next door.
Yes.
Okay. But if it went onto the market and was sold in original or restored state, it's about $1,200. Okay. As is such with the the adjustment in the wiring, it brings it down about 20-25%. So we're talking closer to now around $700 as far as a lamp.
And just for our viewers, that's where the restoration, I think, is very key. If you're interested in getting that full value, always think about that when you have an item. Make sure that you're taking it to a reputable restorer, that someone that knows how to restore it back to that original condition and keep in line with that original craftsmanship.
Right, and to bring it, so.
Yeah.
But it was...
So what do you think?
Well, I'm shocked. I never knew the history of it, and I always thought because we grew up in a sort of a poor neighborhood, and my dad made $75 a month.
There you are, yeah.
And I couldn't imagine them having a lamp like this in their house, and I'm very, very pleased. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for bringing it in, because it gave us an opportunity. And for me, this is all about learning. Every time I do something like this, I am now opening up another door or window and adding a layer to understanding.
Well, it's worth thousands of dollars to me.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And
Yes, exactly.
Exactly, and you wouldn't take anything less for it.
Right.
Phyllis, thank you so much for sharing this with us and your story, and that's what really it's all about. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we will be right back. Stay tuned. We have our next item next.
Because we've got,
But you're not getting it.
yeah, because when we first started buying, we bought
We actually brought them in for
Every first Friday.
and we're going to help kind of promote the event, but they're doing a bunch of our big deal is social media. And I noticed this industry, if you look around, you don't see a lot of kids our age. No. And one of the appraisals that I decided on the site was the senior professor of appraising at NYU. And he's like, when I started this class, huge. He's like, now I'm lucky to pull so Kersten kind of really wants to bring young kids and so she's got like Deborah, junior, monograph teacher. Good luck. So you come to us, we'll carry you with an appraiser in your area, or whatever it needs to be, and you can hook up with them through our website. And all we do is we get it for a customer, so you want to be in a social side of the street, and we mark it. So, if you guys know about specific items, or even if you're not certified, we also do what's called estimation value. So, hey, I've been selling antique cars 30 years. I only ever sold stock. I know what it's worth, and I can tell you how much it's worth. That's good enough for us. So, when you're done investing in research, scraping,
Together. All right.
video guy. Hey! We actually brought them in for
Every first Friday.
and we're going to help kind of promote the event, but they're doing a bunch of our big deal is social media. And I noticed this industry, if you look around, you don't see a lot of kids our age. No. And one of the appraisals that I decided on the site was the senior professor of appraising at NYU. And he's like, when I started this class, huge. He's like, now I'm lucky to pull so Kersten kind of really wants to bring young kids and so she's got like Deborah, junior, monograph teacher. Good luck. come to us, we'll stay with you and pray for in your area, in your field, wherever it needs to be. And you can hook up with them through our website. And all we do is get for a customer. And we mark the So, if you guys know about specific items, or even if you're not certified, we also do what's called estimation value. Okay? I've been selling antique cars for 30 years. I'm only ever sold stock. I know what those words and I can take how much it was for 15 bucks. That's good enough for us. So, when you're done, use that to
Together. All right.
Gail got you in here. We actually brought him in for
Every first Friday.
and we're going to help kind of promote the event, but they're doing a bunch of our big deal is social media. And I noticed this industry, if you look around, you don't see a lot of kids already. No. And one of the appraisals that had in front of the site was the tenured professor of appraising at NYU. And he's like, when I started this class, I was huge. He's like, now I'm lucky to pull Philip. So Kersten kind of really wants to bring young kids and people who are so if you got like a Dale Earnhardt Jr. autograph t-shirt, good luck to you. So you come to us, we'll stay with you and pray for in your area, in your field, wherever it needs to be. And you can hook up with them through our website. And all we do is get for a customer. And we mark the So, if you guys know about specific items, or even if you're not certified, we also do what's called estimation value. Okay? I've been selling antique cars for 30 years. I'm only ever sold stock. I know what those words and I can take how much it was for 15 bucks. That's good enough for us. So, when you're done, use that to
Together. All right.
One item code. Video guy.
These pages.
Oh, hey, let's talk about this one. Welcome back, and if you're just now joining us, we are in our second segment of live appraisal at Kersten's Antiques. We have a great story this segment. Barbara is here with us again. Welcome back, Barbara. Now, this truly is an incredible story, so I'm just going to let you start, okay?
Okay, my mom and dad got married in Chicago, and my mom, of course, was from there, and my dad was from Alabama, so they stayed at the Chicago Ambassador East Hotel, and Ronald and Nancy Reagan were staying there at the same weekend, and they crashed the wedding reception, I guess. So
Wow.
So anyway, they got Ronald Reagan's autograph, and
You can go ahead, thank
yeah,
you.
This scrapbook is falling apart somewhat. It's 60 years old almost.
That's expected. but it really is unbelievable. And they just happen to be staying in the hotel.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes, it was a happenstance.
And so,
And then there's a snapshot here of my mom standing behind, with some of her bridesmaids standing behind
here, I'll pick it up.
Ronald and Nancy Reagan, and mom's in her wedding gown.
Looking fabulous, I will
Yeah,
say.
well, thank you. There was a movie star in their midst.
Right?
At the time. So
And-
they were excited about that.
And even the photos themselves are just incredible. I mean, it's just a blink in that time period. We were looking at the furs earlier and just
Yeah.
ogling them. So, Timothy, what tell us a little bit about this time frame and Ronald
Okay.
Reagan.
Well, first of all, we have to sort of trace where Ronald Reagan was in his progression of life. Okay, he was an Iowa boy, started off as a lifeguard. And there's even within my family, again, this odd story, because my wife's family came from Iowa, that in one summer, a relative of the family was staying at a lake, and this handsome young man saved her from the water, and it turned out to be Ronald. So
Wow, really?
that could be just a family legend, and
Yeah.
afterwards, but it's developed on it. But he went from being a lifeguard to being a radio announcer, and he did color. And at that time, the radio, the game play-by-play would come in by a wire, and he would take and embellish it on the radio. He'd be reading it off the wire and giving the announcement. So he followed the team, and at that point he was known as Dutch Reagan, and the radio announcer. And then in 1932, he was traveling with the team. By 1937, he followed the Cubs to LA. And when in LA, he did a screen test and was picked up as a contract player for the movie studios in what was called their B unit. You had your B unit, the B movie actors, and then the A list actors. So he stayed there for a while, and then finally got a couple iconic roles that sort of lasted him all his life. One was George the Gipper Gipp, and the movie The Newt Rockney Story, played by Edmund.
Oh, yes. That's,
Yeah, so it was a whole big story, and the story goes that he was a star player, got crippled, and as he's on his deathbed, they said the team went out and won one last time for the Gipper. So that became sort of his nickname throughout his career. And he went from being an actor, progressed to being the governor of California, progressed to being the president of the United States. So the value of an item depends on where this person is in his career. And so you have the movie era memorabilia of him as Ronald Reagan, B, moving into A-list actor. And that's where he was at this time. So I went looking through his career to see why he was in Chicago at that time. He had just released a movie with something like Hellcats of the Navy, the fighter pilots, and he was a fighter pilot. It was released in 1957. Also, there was a mention that he gave the speech outside of Chicago that year.
Wow.
So it possibly was there speaking at Eureka College in relation to that. So and it not, but the fact that you have all this evidence of the ambassador, the pump room, followed by a picture now of him in place.
Yeah.
So that gives specific time, place, and tax it. Yes, it was him. Because a lot of actors, when during their movie career, autographs were signed by either the secretary or the studio. So if you got a publicity still, you could write into the studio and they'd say, oh yeah, I need 2 Ronald Reagans, and the lady in the back room would be writing. It really touch his hand. Okay. Progressively, Then the next bump in value would be during his career as governor. Then the next bump would be as he's a seated president. So the highest value for Ronald Reagan would be on White House stationery as a seated president. So that is the top notch.
Right.
Okay, moving down the line. So I was able to track movie career information and memorabilia. What's nice is included in the picture is his wife that was with him most of the rest of his life, Nancy, who was also a war movie. She was a nurse. He was the handsome pilot. So that may have been. He was previously married to Jane Wyman, another movie actress. So of that time period, if you have just an autograph that's provable to Ronald Reagan, let's see, the tracking on it comes to around $200 for autograph that you can verify. Autograph with a photograph. So if you can take and have something to show, yes, it was his hand, it moves it into the $350 range.
Oh, okay.
If you'd had like an autograph, a written letter with his like letterhead and a handwritten message on it with a signature, it moves it up.
The new married couple.
Right.
Nice.
But just the fact that he was in the early part of his career, and so if he had just remained a B actor with no history past it, you're talking about a $20 to $30. But the fact that he now is pulling who he was then forward by being now a recognized president moves it up. So
That's neat. That's really interesting.
And real quick,
The bride and groom would each hold one side of the handle.
okay.
Pose for pictures.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if they actually would drink champagne out of it, but it was a traditional piece for wedding receptions. at
Right,
that
yeah, they
time,
would
in that
often
time,
have
yeah.
the loving
And
cup,
it's inscribed
which would be two handles, so you can
Yeah.
take and
with my mom and dad's name and then their wedding date.
unlike the now, you know, the champagne
A
glass.
little bit more prim and proper.
Yes. Go ahead and show this really quick because I just think it's so great. I mean,
It really is.
I mean, it's so classic and classy, really.
Interesting to see
Yeah.
how people dressed, and it was quite the event. All the women were very
Right.
dressed up. And
Yes. Absolutely. Well, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
the suits, women with hats and gloves. You weren't complete unless you had your hat and your gloves, and women really did. If they dressed up, people would dress for dinner. Men would dress formally for dinner. So it was a much more, I think, personally an elegant and formal
Yes.
period. Now, instead of the blue jeans, the shirt, the
Right.
blazer, and no shoes.
Right.
Yeah.
You had mentioned something about archivally storing
Oh,
that.
yes,
What
because
does that
right now
mean?
it's laid. The other thing is the papers. It may not be acid-free.
No, I doubt it. It was just
And the other thing is you're laying this across that.
Yeah.
So you may want to lay some, like even an onion, one of those thin tissue
Right,
pieces
onion
over
skin,
if
right.
you want to put it in there to
Okay.
protect it. Or some sort of protective sleeve. You
All
go
right.
to like a coin store, they can give you can buy this like little Mylar type sleeve to put it in and keep it, because you don't want to keep it fading, keep it out of
Right.
sunlight. The inks will bleach out just
True.
from being out into light.
it stays in a closet.
Right, yeah, so that I think is really the fact
Right.
that it's been enclosed, no sunlight touched the surface. It's kept it
Excellent point though, because even in my family, I know my parents, their wedding anniversary book looks a lot like this, and just to preserve that family heirloom, I think anyone could glean from this information.
Right,
So.
and you can see the discoloration starting
Yeah.
between here and here. So
Yes, 'cause it's hard to believe this is almost 60 years ago.
yeah, but the
So
fact
go to your
that-
local coin store now. Protect those heirlooms. Thank you guys so much, and we'll be right back.
We actually brought them in for Kersten.
Every first Friday.
And we're going to help kind of promote the event, but they're doing a bunch of big deal with social media. And you notice this industry, if you look around, you don't see a lot of kids already. No. And one of the appraisers that decided on the site was the tenured professor of appraising at NYU. And he's like, when I started this class, he's like, now I'm lucky to fill it. So Kersten kind of really wants to bring young kids and put them in the so if you got like a Deborah or junior, monograph t-shirt, good luck to you. So you come to us, we'll share with you the if you guys know about specific items, or even if you're not certified, you also do what's called estimation value. Okay? I've been selling antique cars for 30 years. I've only ever sold stock. I know what you're worth, and I can take my $15. That's good enough for me. So, when you guys use that to replace
Get to know Timothy better. I'm so glad to have him on the show. So whenever you join Kersten's Antiques, you're able to get in touch with real appraisers. Timothy is one of our appraisers on the site, and he is somebody that being able to have him here today, I just want you to know him the way that I know him. So Timothy, thank you so much for being here at the show.
Oh, thank you for bringing me here.
Of course. Well, you have a great story. So your story is a little bit different. You got into appraisal kind of as a progression.
Right.
So can you tell me a little bit about that?
I did not originally set out to end up here.
Yeah.
But life is always a journey that progresses, and as your needs and some point you have to kind of pull strings together. So initially for me, I guess the sort of the feeling of being around antiques and being around historical items. And we ended up moving across the country. That I was born in the middle of the country. Within 2 months I was now living in Boston. And during the war there was no housing available. So my father found a place outside of Concord, Mass. And it happened to, interestingly enough, be called the Dovecote. The Dovecote was an antique store. And we lived in the upper floor of the antique store. And there was no place to put me, so they used the top drawer of a dresser.
I love this story.
So some people were born in a trunk and ended up on me, I was born in an antique dresser. So maybe something about being antiques always has that.
I was going to say, it's very fitting, right?
And kid, I would pick up, say, Treasure Island, and they would talk about, he was on a boat. What kind of boat? So then I'd go to the library and go, oh, this was the kind of boat. And he climbed up the mast. What kind of mast? So I was always in the process of finding and discovering what they were talking about, where it was. And as a kid, I would ride like 2 miles on a bike to the nearest library and spend my time in the library. So it's always been a connection with books. And then my grandfather, when I went to his house, was always walk softly. because he was an engraver. And he was constantly working in precious metals, for which he would be spending hours carving a single letter. You know, and as a kid, I couldn't bounce the ball. I had to sit and watch. So I learned from almost osmosis of what it took to create a beautiful object. And the house was full of things that he had found. The clocks were restored that he'd picked up off the street. But as we were talking earlier, he came out of the Chicago Institute of Art and then moved to LA. So that the integral connection between art and history and antiques was always sort of underlying there. My father was supposed
But older though, and you met your wife, she also got into appraisal, right?
That when we kind of, both of us were into books, and I had my library of information I had gathered, and she had her library, so we called it was a marriage of the merging of the libraries. So the first thing we did was we needed to now take and fill our house.
Yeah.
And we decided rather than fill it with new furniture, the best investment was antiques. So we spent most of our married life migrating from antique store to antique store, buying a piece here, buying a piece there. And as we were buying the pieces, we were going, was that story right? Was this really an RS Prussia piece? Or did somebody file the back off and go, looks like RS Prussia to me? So as we came to a point where we were moving out of the regular work world, we wanted to develop a career based on collect dirt from every stop.
Really?
And so
that is
she had
so
in
cool.
her bedroom the history of her travel across the United States in little dirt bottles. So,
I love that.
and
oh my
so
gosh.
it became a natural thing for us to be involved in collecting. So we started as part-time jobs working in antique malls. And so after the day's work, we would go and slowly move from into the just working in the mall to start dealing. We had bought all these pieces. Can we deal? But then knowledge is always at the base of it.
Yeah.
Are you buying the right thing? How do you know? And my drive to know has always been there.
Right.
So we enrolled into a course of appraisals. It was at that time a place on the east or west coast called the College for Appraisers. It had been around for like 15, 20 years or more. And they offered a full body of courses that would train you in glass. We took courses in glass, took courses in jewelry, took courses
Wonderful.
in metal, took courses in furniture, and at the end you were given a theory and methodology class, because it's 4 items laid around the wall. And so now you had to put all that knowledge and the skills into going, what is this and how much is it worth, and then writing it up and an acceptable appraisal. So we passed that, and now the next step is to move into the appraisal world. To do that, you have to pass or take the 15-hour Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. And that's produced by the Appraisal Foundation in Washington, which gives more credibility and keeps you on track. Is everybody on the same page? The ethics of it.
And actually, Bonnie and I are actually USPAP certified as well. So.
Right. So you've been there.
Yeah.
And 15 hours of
and
hearing.
It's needed information. It's absolutely essential. It really is.
Right, and it does.
And I wanted to touch on. The future of appraisal, because we've talked about this ourselves. So we're getting some overhead. Hold on, guys. Okay, so it's all right, guys. Hold on. We're gonna wait till the fine. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to keep going. Hopefully you guys can hear me. Basically, the future of appraisal, though, is in the hands of the younger people, and a lot of our appraisers are older, and they are retiring. They're gonna die. I mean, that's just part of life. And so something that was important to you that we've talked about on several occasions is the advocacy for bringing younger people into the business.
Exactly.
and how to get them there and the process. So that's something that was really important to me that we touched on today in this conversation, because we want you guys to understand that this is a great business to be in, and it's something where you're always learning. It's different and changing, and it really is an incredible career if you love art, if you love antiques, if you love history. So we do have to wrap it up for now, unfortunately, but we will have another interview like this again.
Oh, definitely.
And please, guys, leave your questions below. If you have any questions, about how to become an appraiser, leave them below, and I will get. It's incredible. So please, if you know anybody that might be interested, put them in touch with me. So again, thank you so much. We've got one more appraisal.
One last
Oh
thing.
yes,
While
sure.
you're
Go
still
ahead,
at-
Timothy. Go ahead.
And it's a changing field. You're now bringing in the 21st century, live streaming, all of this to it. So we, as a business or a career, we're now having to move into how all of this is connected. And the people who know how this all works are the younger people.
It's true.
I
So
grew
true.
up where, computers, what's a computer? That's something IBM has in a huge room.
Absolutely.
What's a cell phone? So the skills that you have, that they know, needs, if you could integrate it and bring them together with the training and the knowledge and the base, that it has a great future. So
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Timothy. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay, stay tuned. We have one more appraisal, and you don't want to miss this one. It is about Tulsa history, so stay tuned. Welcome back, guys. If you're just now tuning in, we are doing live appraisal at the Vintage Tulsa Show. Thank you for being here. It's Kersten's Antiques Live. Our last piece of the day is fantastic. It is a piece of Tulsa, Oklahoma history. So this is Kirk Van Treese. Why don't you tell us a little bit about this piece?
I bought a building back in 2008, and the painting was in the building, and don't know a lot about it. That's why I'm here today.
And it's 8 by 8, correct?
Well, it's 80 inches by 80 inches.
Okay.
So it's pretty close, pretty close. So it's a big painting of Tulsa in 1946. It was done by a local architect for the National Bank of Tulsa.
Can we get the we have the marking down here. It says National Bank of Tulsa, 1946. Huge piece. So anyway, bought a building.
Bought a building. Yeah, the painting was in the building. I discovered it. Don't know much about it. And know it was done for the National Bank of Tulsa in 46. Know a little bit about Paul.
Okay, it's a huge format, and No, originally we looked at it in the photos, it looked much smaller, so you expect it to be a much more diminished piece.
Right.
But with the history, the size makes sense. In 46, we'd talked about the WPA, so that most likely moves it into as a local artist, because it's Paul Emile Corubia,
Right.
who was an architect. Apparently, you said he taught at Tulsa University.
Correct.
As what, a art teacher?
Art teacher, yes.
Okay, so you being in the area have access to much more information than I do.
Right.
Right. And as we were talking about learning about items, the internet may be great for taking and pulling up threads of information, but you've always got to go back to where the archives were.
Absolutely.
You have to go to and find the area, and you had to do a lot of research to
Right.
track him down to there.
Right.
So you being here, you were able to connect more directly to who he was, what he did, and me doing the research online, the most tech, you can go to their archive and track in through the internet and find a list of everybody alphabetical who belong to the organization. So it's done not only as from an artistic matter, but it's also as almost like an architectural rendering, showing various almost like historical development and aspects
Yes.
of the Tulsa area.
And this is actually the now shut down historical Route 66 bridge,
Right.
which is fantastic. And then we also have, for us Oklahomans, as Tulsans, recognizing, some of the iconic structures that are still here. And you were saying the Williams building is now
in this forefront, yes.
Yes, right
On the north-
here.
on the north end of it, yes.
Something else I think that we were talking about is the fact that because it was in that building for so long, that it is dirty and that
Right.
that it needs to be properly restored, and that would really bring these colors back out and bring them to life.
Right.
But Timothy, you're absolutely right, because it is such a local piece that it kind of makes sense that the value is on in this market.
Right. And it's a very regional work.
Yes.
He has not really entered into the national or international, has passed through the secondary market, which gives us a traceable record. Auction sales, coming up, did it sell, not it sell. And now the art market is almost equivalent to the stock market, because people are using it as investment purposes. And some of the people, if they can't make money off the stock, they will now buy and invest. So what we're seeing is the market's up in art, the market's down in art, and the wave sign of the stock market flows against that. Stock market goes off, then people start investing in other things. Silver, wine, art, and gold. Okay, this is the art part. So they'll go for swag as an alternative to investment. So as an appraiser, we look for the swag records to
Yes.
see where it is. The gentleman has not, so to give you a true value is very challenging. What I was able to track down, he did do, interestingly enough, an illustrated book on Will Rogers.
Right.
It came out in 1941. He taught at a school.
Right.
So your challenge is, I can't really put a speculated value on it because no anchor to build it off of.
Right.
And the part of the uniform standards of professional practice is thou shalt not speculate.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because they'll get you for that one.
Yes.
But, so you kind of almost have to create your own market,
Right.
which we had talked about, and for you to put out feelers to who in this region would most likely be interested in the piece.
Right.
And you've already approached the Historical Society
Correct.
as one aspect, and they weren't really able to embrace it and take it
Right.
into their fold.
Yeah, he weren't willing to appraise it. So.
Right, or just even to acquire it.
Right.
They wouldn't want it as part of it. So now we'd also talked about the possibility of the two museums in the area
Correct.
as a place to approach. The fact that he was with Tulsa University.
Right.
You might even ask them And they definitely would be able to give you more background as who he was, and might even have record as far as it. So the initial, you'd need, almost quoting, boots on the ground research to be able to go into it. But definitely at this point we're in risk of losing the whole piece. The wood is starting to split. The adhesion up here was put onto board, and how it put onto board, you'd usually have to lay like a gesso back onto it to pull it, but that, and then paint over it, because if not, then it'll just flake off. But we are starting to get flaking and damage around the edges.
Right.
So it definitely needs help, but it's a historical related item connected to this time period, the history of the city, and so that's where it should remain. And
Absolutely, absolutely. And we had discussed that before, you know, that it's about this market and finding someone in this market. But thank you so much for bringing it in. It really is fantastic in the history of Tulsa. It's so great.
Thank you
so much.
Appreciate it.
All right, guys. Well, that is going to wrap up our appraisal for today and for the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have watched any of our videos, thank you so much. It means a lot to us. That's why we're here. We're here for you. We're here to bring this information to you. So tune in next time. We will have another show probably in about a All right, guys, I have one last thing to share with you. If you are interested in this piece, this beautiful piece of Tulsa history, it can be yours. So log on to Kirsten'sAntiques.com, comment below. You can also get in touch with Kirk Van Treest. He is the seller, and we definitely want to sell this for you. So if you want this piece, it's fantastic. It is one of a kind. It can be yours. So let us know. Thanks.
notice this industry, if you look around, you don't see a lot of kids our age. No. And one of the appraisals that in front of the site was the tenured professor of appraising at NYU. And he's like, when I started this class, I was huge. And he's like, now I'm lucky for Philip. So Kersten kind of really wants to bring young kids and entrepreneurs into the industry. So if you've got like a Deborah or junior, monograph future, good luck with that. So you come to us, we'll carry you to an appraiser in your area, or wherever it needs to be, and you can hook up with them through our website. And all we do is get your customers, like you want to be a social side of the street, and we market it. So, well, if you guys know about specific items, or even if you're not certified, we also do what's called estimation value. So, hey, I've been selling antique cars 30 years. I've only ever sold stock. I know what the word is. Okay.
Together. All right.
My name is Coach. Video guy. Hey! Bill got you here. We actually brought him in for
Every first
Oh,
Friday.
and we're going to help kind of promote the event, but they're doing a bunch of our big deal is social media. And notice this industry, if you look around, you don't see a lot of kids our age. No. And one of the appraisals that in front of the site was the tenured professor of appraising at NYU. And he's like, when I started this class, I was huge. And he's like, now I'm lucky for Philip. So Kersten kind of really wants to into the industry. So if you've got like a Deborah or junior, monograph future, good luck with that. So you come to us, we'll carry you to an appraiser in your area, or wherever it needs to be, and you can hook up with them through our website. And all we do is get your customers, like you want to be a social side of the street, and we market it. So, well, if you guys know about specific items, or even if you're not certified, we also do what's called estimation value. So, hey, I've been selling antique cars 30 years. I've only ever sold stock. I know what the word is, and I can tell you how many people are 15 bucks. That's good enough for us. So, when you've done, you've got some research, okay. Bill got you here. We actually brought him in for
Every first
Oh,
Friday.
and we're going to help kind of promote the event, but they're doing a bunch of our big deal is social media. And notice this industry, if you look around, you don't see a lot of kids our age. No. And one of the appraisals that in front of the site was the tenured professor of appraising at NYU. And he's like, when I started this class, I was huge. And he's like, now I'm lucky for Philip. So Kersten kind of really wants to bring young kids and entrepreneurs into the industry. So if you've got like a Deborah or junior, monograph future, good luck with that. We actually brought them in for
Every first Friday.
and we're going to help kind of promote the event, but they're doing a bunch of our big deal is social media. And we noticed I started with Black Youth. He's like, now I'm lucky for Philip. So Kersten kind of really wants to bring young kids and like Deborah, our junior, autograph t-shirt. Good luck with that. So you come to us, we'll prepare you with an appraiser in your area, deal wherever it needs to be, and you can look up for them through our website. And also see for customers, and we mark it. So, if you guys know about specific items, or even if you're not certified, we also do what's called estimation of value. So, hey, I've been selling antique cars for 30 years, and I've only ever sold stock. I know what it's worth, and I can tell you how much it's worth for 15 bucks. That's good enough for us. So, when you guys use that for
Together. All right.
We actually brought them in for
Every first Friday.
and we're going to help kind of promote the event, but they're doing a bunch of our big deal is social media. And we noticed this industry, if you look around, you don't see a lot of kids our age. No. And one of the appraisers that was running on the site was the senior professor of appraising at NYU. And he's like, when I started with Black Youth, he's like, now I'm lucky for Philip. So Kersten kind of really wants to bring young kids and like Deborah, our junior, autograph t-shirt. Good luck with that. Your area, deal wherever it needs to be, and you can look up for them through our website. And also see if you get it for customers. And we mark it. So, if you guys know about specific items, or even if you're not certified, we also do what's called estimation of value. So, hey, I've been selling antique cars for 30 years,